Welcome to the Screen the Screener College Basketball Podcast with your hosts, Mike Randle and Gus Kearns.
Welcome back to the Screen the Screener College Basketball Podcast, where we continue on our way to preview each and every one of the 357 college basketball teams. I am your host, Mike Randle. Please follow me on Twitter at Randle Rant. Today, we bring in the king. We bring in the Gonzaga Bulldogs, and the only person to talk when we're talking Gonzaga is to talk to the great Jim Meehan, who's the beat writer for the Spokesman Review. You can follow him on Twitter at SRJim. He has been here on many, many occasions to talk about the Zags, and certainly this year, as they were last year, they head in as one of the best teams in the country. Jim, pleasure to have you back on the podcast. How you doing?
Hey, thanks for having me back. It's like old home week here.
Very true. It is. And we're in August. We're heading into September, and we have to talk about the Zags. Look, I am old enough to remember when Gonzaga was, quote, a nice little mid-major. That is no longer the case. Mark Few and the Bulldogs are a juggernaut. They are one of the elite teams in college basketball, and certainly last year, Jim, they were as well. Talk about the season as a whole and any bumps that they had along the way. I mean, they were at a point, Jim, where they didn't have to practice, and they went out and they beat Iowa by double digits. So talk about COVID and the great season for the Zags last year.
Well, it was one of the most dominating seasons you'll ever see. And people might attribute that to playing in the WCC. The competition isn't as great every night out as it would be in one of the bigger conferences, but they dominated good teams right from the start. They beat Kansas. They beat Iowa by double digits. They took down Virginia, handled, I think they led by close to 30 in that game. And then the teams in their league, St. Mary's, BYU, they came from 10 back, I think, to beat BYU. Just a very complete team, as good offensive team as you're going to see. Drew Timme inside, Corey Kispert on the wing, three-point shooter, and those guards with Joel Ayayi. With Joel Ayayi, you had Jalen Suggs, came an All-American. They were loaded. Andrew Nemhart, who I think will be an All-American this year. They had just an almost ideal set of components for an offense, and most all the coaches you talk to, starting with Bill Self after the season opening game, was comparing him to Kentucky's unbeaten run until they lost at the Final Four. What was that, 2015? So a pretty magical season all the way until those final 40 minutes in Indianapolis.
It was a magical season and so much talent there. Listen, I've been on record. I think Jalen Suggs is going to be the NBA Rookie of the Year. It did not surprise me how he stepped up his game as they got into the tournament season. He was great all year. We saw the fantastic one-handed twist pass that was on Twitter for early in the season. Just a great job across the board. And listen, that UCLA comeback was one for the ages. March has a way of having the magical rise from teams, especially, Jim, in the first four. They were in that first four game, UCLA versus Michigan State. They almost lost that game. They were losing by 12, I think, at the half, and then they went on a run. But the Zags held them off, of course, ending with that incredible shot by Jalen Suggs.
Yeah, I was sitting, they had the media kind of in the baseline, and so he was dribbling away from me. And I saw him pull up and shoot it. I wasn't directly behind him, but I had a pretty good angle, and I thought, that's right on line. I don't know if, it's 40 feet away. You have no idea if it's going down or not. But of all guys, that doesn't really surprise you that it was Jalen Suggs. He's won at every sport he's played, at every level he's played. He's won with Team USA. I think he's got 3 gold medals, and did almost, tried to carry him in the title game. He was the key, or the kind of the lone guy offensively that had a nice night. He scored in the 20s there. Even though Baylor has, great defensive guards, he still found his way to score. And he just had a knack for that all year. It started actually at the craziness in the kennel. They have this kind of team scrimmage that they introduced the team to the public. And, usually there's 6,000 fans there. With the pandemic, there was, about 35 people, media, staffers, etc. And he's kind of going along, and he looked fine. And, you could see how athletic he was, and he was, directing the offense. And then kind of got to the fourth quarter, and he just took over, started scoring, 3-point play, hit a three. I think he had a dunk. And it was just kind of a prelude to the season. He just has that knack for knowing when to turn it on and has that ability to do it. And I think what everybody associated with the program, and you talk to the coaches, will tell you just the way he bought in and was part of it, wanted to be part of it, wanted to get better, and did. I think he got better at Gonzaga. His passing, his defensive work, I think, was pretty underrated. I mean, the kid can guard. He's physical. He's tough. He got in a little foul trouble here and there, but he turned a lot of games just with the steal or a block or something like that. So he really was all around, team-wise and ability-wise, as good a player as they've had come through. And I think you're right. I think he's going to be exceptional at the pros. I think his game suits that better. And I think with time, which you see this with guys coming into the league that maybe shoot in the mid-30s from distance, I think that number will climb and climb. He never has this "it's all me" attitude. It's always about how I can make the team as good as it can be. Usually that's with the pass or defensively. He can run the floor, great in transition. If he dials up his three ball and finishes just a touch better inside. I mean, you see it at times. He's great at it, but he can get better. I don't think there's anything stopping him from being an all-star multi-times in that league.
Yep, and in that final game, you're right, 22 points. He made 2 threes, 3 assists, did get into foul trouble early when they got down 9-0, had 2 fouls. I thought that was a critical situation. Coach Few brought him back pretty quickly, and he ended up playing, I think, 32 minutes or so, 33 minutes. But that was a crucial stretch, and that was the only thing. It was Baylor was on a sort of a magic run. They had a magic night, but Gonzaga was, for my money, the best team in the country throughout the entire year. So Suggs is gone. Some other players are gone. Kispert, of course, who's been a legendary player for Gonzaga. Talk about those who are departing, and you have a great core returning before we even get to, Jim, the new players coming in. So talk about the veterans who have left and those that are staying with the nucleus here for the Zags in 2021, 2022.
Well, the two big losses, of course, well, three. Of course, our first-round draft picks, Jalen Suggs goes 5th. I think that's the second highest in program history behind Adam Morrison, who went 3rd in 2006. And then they lose Corey Kispert, a rare fourth-year senior guy who stayed, was projected to go the year before in the second round, and just had an incredible season. His shooting numbers almost unrivaled for what you see at the college level, from 2-point, 3-point, and the free throw line. So he goes 15th. They've never had two guys drafted that high. In 2019, they had Brandon Clark and Rui Hachimura go in the top 20. Brandon might have been 21 or 22, but so that's two primetime guys right there, 2 All-Americans. Your floor leader in Jalen Suggs, maybe your team leader in Corey Kispert. And Joel Ayayi, he didn't get drafted, but there was some speculation, some thought that he was probably going to get drafted late in the second round and declined so he could pick his spot. And he ended up signing a 2-way deal with the Lakers right after the draft ended. So
it's a good landing spot, Jim.
He was kind of the behind-the-scenes guy. He was kind of in the background in some ways, but just a remarkably efficient player. Didn't need the ball in his hands to do damage. Great cutter, great passer. Good size on the wing, could lead the break, finish on the break. Just a perfect complement to those other guys who have moved on into that team. So I expect he'll be he didn't have a great summer league, but I think if it's anything like Gonzaga, it takes him a little while to settle in, and then he just gets better and better and better. So if they give him a chance, I think he'll work out with the Lakers. So that's 3 big-time guys that they lost. Joel was actually honorable mention.
Yeah, and Jim, Joel, 12 points, 13 rebounds, 14 assists, triple-double against Portland back in January. So you're not kidding. He can do it all. He can help a team win no matter what.
Well, he was an honorable mention All-American. So they had 4 guys that had some type of All-American honors, And the big one that came back, the big decision kind of around here everybody was waiting on, was Drew Timme. Just as good an inside scorer as there is for a big in the country. Probably him and the Iowa kid Garza were, the most prolific scoring inside guys all season. And now Garza's in the NBA, so that mantle will go to Drew, who will be most likely the favorite for preseason player of the year. Averaged right around 20 points a game. Could not be more efficient. Shot somewhere in the upper 60s from the floor. And he has spent the offseason working in Dallas with Tyler Ralph, a trainer down there who trains a ton of college guys, pro guys. Jerome Randle with the Knicks is one of his guys. And he has, worked on his three-point shooting. He's worked on his ball handling, all those things that if there were, things that weren't prominent in his game last season or his first two seasons at Gonzaga, that's about it. I mean, his ability to stretch the floor and then be able to guard, on the perimeter, on those switches, those kind of things. Those things are what probably kept him from going pro this year. And he wasn't on a lot of draft boards, but if he can make that perimeter shot and be able to show that he can guard on the perimeter, he handles the ball really well. He's a pretty good passer, and he has more moves inside. I mean, it's like a catalog. Which one is he going to pick? And he is going to go into the season with a lot of publicity, and rightfully so. And then the other guys back from last year, I mentioned Andrew Nemhart, who was, again, a little bit like Joel. He wasn't the front and center guy all the time, especially with Jalen Suggs around, but he has that ability to do that. And he was a great ball handler, playmaker, terrific off the ball screen. I mean, just his decisions, his ability to score it or feed people is as good as you're going to see. Good size at 6'5". If he knocks down perimeter shots, which he did okay last year, if that improves, I don't think there's anything stopping him from making a run for the All-American teams. And then Anton Watson, kind of a part-time starter the last 2 years, 6'8", about 225, very versatile defender. Scores it at times, very efficient, shot something around 70% from the field, but he will be another guy in that rotation for sure this year of the guys coming back.
Great points across the board. Nemhart is a starting point guard from Florida, and he comes to Gonzaga to go in a supporting role. I mean, that's really incredible. And he came on at the end of last year. Double digits there, 17 points against Creighton, 13 and 10 back-to-back in the WAC championship there against BYU, St. Mary's. Played well, very, very well for them down the stretch. Definitely, like I said, big size as well. Looking at Timmy inside, how is this a concerted effort with few? I mean, he's been able to go from Shemek Karnowski to Petrusev to Timmy. He seems to find these post players that are just big, they're strong, and they're talented, and they get better. I mean, that has to be, I would think, Jim, just a focus, because that's the elite level that they're at. They just reload, and after Timmy, there'll be another one. It just seems like the prototype is just being filled every year.
Yeah, there's another one this year, Chet Holmgren, number one recruit in the nation that's a 7-footer that plays on the perimeter. I'm not sure I've seen any game like his at the college level in a long time. But you're right, they go back, kind of started with, they've had good bigs going way back to the start of the run, Casey Calvary, Axel Dench, they've Corey Violette, Ronnie Turioff, J.P. Batista. It kind of went on and on. Robert Sacre, and then it really took off with Kelly Olynyk.
Yes,
a kid from Canada that redshirted mid-career, has a huge junior season, and ends up being a lottery pick. He's still playing in the NBA. And you mentioned Shemek. You've got Domantas Sabonis, who's an all-star in the NBA now. Shemek, Domantas played together. Kyle Wilcher. Big-time scorer, as good a scorer as they've had inside. And then on and on. Brandon Clark, Rui Hachimura, Killian Tilly's in the NBA. They're pretty well they've got that spot, that 4-5 kind of combo or wing stretch guy, I should say, They've had a ton of those guys, and they've got two of them this year with Timmy inside primarily. But I think you're going to see him expand his range. And then Holmgren, he he is 7'1". He's very thin. I mean, he's still growing into his body and, maturing and all that. He's a young kid. But if you've watched any of the highlights of him at the FIBA World Cup, where he was the MVP of the tournament as the USA won, he can score it inside. He can score it outside. I talked to his coach there, was Jamie Dixon at TCU. And he was like, I really haven't seen guys like him come around because of that size. He'll handle the ball. He'll play off ball screens. He can spot up three. A very pure stroke. He played in Jamal Crawford's Seattle area guy that played in the NBA for a long time. Great player. He has a Pro-Am league in the Seattle area. So three of the Zag freshmen, Nolan Hickman, Hunter Salas, and Chet Holmgren went over and played. And Holmgren's hitting, spinning fadeaway step backs, and he's dunking. And I mean, he has got a lot of ways to score. And I think the best thing for him on this team is they don't need him to be 20 points a game. And I'd be shocked if he is 20 points a game. You got Timmy, you got Nemhart, you got these freshmen that have come in. You got a transfer from Iowa State that averaged something like 15 points a game, and Rasir Bolton. Nemhart's going to score in double figures, if not closer to 15, 18. So he doesn't have to, carry the load. And I think that combination of Timmy and Holmgren, inside, outside, kind of like Timmy and Killian Tilly, or, Wilcher and Sabonis. They have different strengths. And I think they'll play well off each other. And when you got a 7-foot guy that knows how to play, he has high IQ. That high-low game could be devastating just because he can throw over any defender, and he can guard smaller guys. I'm sure your viewers are well aware of that move he put on Steph Curry. Look it up on YouTube. And remember, that's a 7-footer doing that. So they've got a great inside game. They've had it for decades, but particularly this last 10 years or so, when they've really taken off, and it kind of separates them. There's a lot of guard-driven teams, not when you get to the finals or the Final Four or the last 32, whatever. But a lot of teams just don't have their ability inside and their depth inside, and it looks like they've got it again.
Chet Holmgren, I see a connection, a similarity to Kyle Wilcher, but a little more well-rounded. And I almost see a little Dirk Nowitzki here, Jim, with Chet Holmgren. He's coming in number one player in the country, 7'1". Hunter Salas coming in, combo guard, 6'5" for Nebraska. Nolan Hickman coming in, 6'2" point guard from Utah. Caden Perry coming in, who in any other class would probably be the elite player, 4 stars coming in from Washington. In terms of the transfers, Aaron Cook has left. He's gone to Georgia. And Rasir Bolton, who was a deadly scorer there for Iowa State, had to carry the mantle for a lot of the seasons because COVID really hit Iowa State. This team, Jim, is deep. How do you think Mark Few's going to handle this? They obviously are going to have a robust schedule, but he's gotten the program to a point now where there is so much talent, everyone has to work together and know that they're going to have their moment. Obviously, he'll be able to do that, but it's amazing because in any other situation, Chet Holmgren is getting featured 23, 25 points a game. He must have really bought into the Gonzaga culture. And everyone here is going to be working together to give them the number 3 recruiting class in the country, by far the number 1 in the WCC. I think it's going to be Mark Few having to really do some work with the kids about unselfishness, but it appears, Jim, they are loaded.
Well, that has become one of the characteristics of the program. They've had a lot of talented teams, a lot of talented players in years with pretty good depth. And so they've had, we'll take Andrew Nemhart last year. Yep. He wasn't even going to play. Yes. He was going to redshirt, and, Jalen was going to run the team, and then he'd be the primary lead guard the following year. Right before the season starts, he gets his waiver, and away he goes. And he's not, it's not that he was going to score 20 points a game or be the All-American. It was he made the team a ton better. They don't get where they ended up without him. They don't beat West Virginia. I'll guarantee you that. He took that game over. But they had Jalen Suggs didn't score 25, 30 points a game like a lot of people probably would have thought. I mean, he had his nights, but they have a way of guys understanding that even if it means, tamping down your game in a certain area or just the ability to fit in and do what's best for the program has been one of their strengths forever. And it'll be tested again, you're right, because they got so much depth. And they've got these four freshmen. I mean, Caden Perry, nobody talks about Caden Perry. He is 6'9" and can jump out of the gym, huge numbers in high school. Started playing in a very high-level AAU ball. I think he played with Paulo Banchero, the kid at Duke, one of the top recruits in the nation. I mean, he had a back injury that sidelined him during the season, but it sounds like he's back practicing some and working his way in. There's comparisons to Brandon Clark with his athleticism. And Brandon is as high a flyer as you're going to ever see at the college level. So, yeah, they've got a lot of pieces. They've got Dominic Harris and Julian Strother, who are very highly rated recruits from the year before. They played about 7 minutes each last season. And, where do they fit in? They could start. They could come off the bench. They could get beat out by the freshmen. The freshmen could get beat out by them. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out because Nemhart's going to be the lead dog. You know that Chet's going to be the 4 and Timmy's going to be the 5. But they have so many different ways they could go. Julian Strother, 6'7". He could if he's knocking down shots, he could fill the Kispert role. Dominic Harris, very good athlete and showed, scoring ability as well. Hunter Salas is a nice player. I mean, a two-way player. He plays both ends of the floor. He can run the floor. Nolan Hickman is an excellent point guard. I could see them playing Hickman and Nemhart together, just the way they played Suggs and Nemhart together, the way they played Nigel Williams-Goss and Josh Perkins together. They've got a lot of options, and there's playing time there, but it's going to have to be won in practice by performance. The recruiting rankings are great and all, but if it's not showing up on the floor, Mark Few is going to play who he thinks is going to give him the best chance. And so they can probably go 8-9 deep. Another kid we didn't even mention, Ben Gregg, a kid from Oregon, is 6'9", a prototypical stretch 4 that the program has thrived with. He joins at mid-season last year, graduated early, and joined at mid-season, and really showed he has a bright future. And he's got a head start by coming in at mid-season last year. So I think he's going to be in the mix as well. So it's a lot to sort out. I think you can probably bank on at least those 3 guys, Nemhart, Timme, and Holmgren starting. After that, it's going to be a fist fight to see who emerges.
One more question here, Jim. This has been amazing. And of course, it's on the non-conference because Gonzaga's sights right now are national championship. They are at that level. I laugh. I look back and we go back to 2007, 2008 season and some of the naive criticisms that those that maybe just turn on college basketball when we get to March says, oh, Gonzaga, they don't play anyone. And I look back, 2007, 2008, their first 4 games were Montana, Idaho, UC Riverside, and Western Kentucky. Well, Jim, that was quite a ways ago because last year their opening 4 games were Kansas, Auburn, West Virginia, and Iowa, and they won each of those by a substantial margin. So obviously Mark Few has gone out and made sure to schedule up to have these tremendous games, independent games, non-conference games. What do we have on tap this year? Maybe the whole schedule is not out yet, but what can you tell us about the non-conference?
Well, it's loaded again. I mean, they're going to play Texas, I think the second game of the year, maybe the third, early November. All Texas did is hire a new coach, bring in 5 or 6 grad transfers that are ranked, I think, in ESPN's top 30 or so. And they've got guys coming back. They got a great backcourt coming back. So that's the prime home game on Gonzaga's schedule. They're playing UCLA in Las Vegas. Not a rematch of the Final Four game, but the same 2 teams that played one of the best games I've ever seen.
Yep.
In any tournament, regular season, whenever. That was a fabulous game to watch. High-level offensive team, UCLA. They made shots just like Gonzaga did in that game. Both of them shot close to 60%. And they returned Tiger Campbell, Johnny Juzang, Hawkes Jr. I mean, they're loaded. And they added a guard that's, I think, going to be a factor, Peyton Watson, that played with Holmgren at the U19s. Very good player out of the Long Beach area. So they're loaded. Texas is loaded. Then they're playing Duke in Vegas 4 days later at, I think it's Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving at T-Mobile. Yes. Coach K's final year, but they got Banchero, the kid out of Seattle. That's a top recruit, never hurting for talent, and is as good a program as there's been for 30 years in college basketball. So those are the biggest games. But then they've got in December, they are bringing back the Battle in Seattle, which they had for a number of years at Key Arena. That's been remodeled to Climate Pledge Arena, which is hosting the Seattle Kraken, is the main tenant, the new hockey team. So they're playing Alabama over at the Battle of Seattle. Alabama was one of the top teams in the country last year. Have made real strides recruiting. They're bringing in big-time guys. They kept a guard that entered the transfer portal. He decided to come back, so they're very good. They've got Texas Tech, which is a matchup in Phoenix at the Jerry Colangelo doubleheader down there. So that is it is very possible with UCLA, Texas, that those two teams will be in the top 3 or 4 of the preseason poll, along with Gonzaga. So there could be a 1-2 matchup or a 1-4 matchup, however it works out. Duke's in the top 10 of most of them. Alabama's in the top 15. And Texas Tech is right on the edge of making the top, top 25. And in conference, BYU is reloaded. They've been a ranked team, an NCAA tournament team, and St. Mary's returns every single player on the roster. I mean, when has that ever happened in college basketball anymore? So you got to expect that they're going to make a big jump this year and be right in the mix too. So they've got a lot of primetime games, and just like last year with Kansas and Iowa and West Virginia, they played top 10 teams and played very well against them. So those tests will kind of show us early on. We should know by December 1, how good this team is and what the ceiling is.
Folks, that's Texas, Duke, UCLA, Alabama, and Texas Tech. Gonzaga is going to win a lot of those games, Jim, but the real winners are us that we get to watch and see this. Obviously, Gonzaga is going to be right back at the top. Just an exciting team, legendary program every year, year in, year out. And we are rooting here at Screen the Screener for that national championship because Mark Few and the crew are banging on the door, and they certainly deserve it. Folks, Jim Meehan, if you want to know Gonzaga, this is the person to talk to. We're blessed to have him on every year. Follow him on Twitter at SRJim. He writes about Gonzaga for the Spokesman Review. Jim, it is a pleasure. We'd love to catch up during the season here as our train continues for the preview, but we had to stop at the Zags, the number 1 team in the country, and they're coming back reloaded as they always are. Thanks so much for a few minutes.
Hey, enjoyed it as always. Thanks for having me.